Welcome to my Resto Shaman class review for Legion. I'm Xanatos and I'll be guiding you through the talents and some of the gameplay. Hope you enjoy. Alright, let's take a look at the talents for the Restoration Shaman. Tier 1 we have Undulation, Unleashed Life, and Torrent. Undulation essentially increases the third healing wave or healing surge, essentially direct heals, by 50%. Unleashed Life will give you a bonus to your next direct heal, as well as healing for about 60k or so on a 15-second cooldown and costs 11,000 mana. Torrent increases the initial heal of Riptide by 40%. So the way I see the first tier is that Undulation is really for mana efficiency. Unleashed Life would be more for where single target healing is important slash kind of like burst sections, and then Torrent would be more for raid healing. On Tier 2 we have Gust of Wind, Graceful Spirit, and Wind Rush Totem. These are all movement speed, and they're kind of dependent on the fight. Gust of Wind I can see when you need to get out of a specific fire very quickly. Graceful Spirit for movement heavy fights. The lower cooldown on Spirit Walkers could be potentially amazing. Wind Rush provides you with some raid utility, providing a buff for everyone for 60%. The next tier is kind of your CC tier. We have Lightning Surge Totem, which provides stun. This is when you have ads that you want to kill or interrupt, but you don't care, how long it CCs for. So if you had a group of casters that you need to burn down and you want to make sure none of them get their casts off, this is a pretty useful totem to have. Earth Grasp would be for CCing melee. And then the Voodoo would be probably for things you want to CC for a time that you don't want to touch at all because it breaks on damage. The next tier we've got Crashing Waves, Ancestral Guidance, and Deluge. Crashing Waves gives Riptide an additional charge of Tidal Waves. Ancestral Guidance gives you, for the next 10 seconds, 20% of your damage, and healing is converted to healing on up to 3 nearby injured party or raid members. And Deluge gives you chain heals for an additional 20% on targets with Riptide or Healing Rain. I see Crashing Waves as being pretty meh, minor buff to Healing Wave and Surging. Ancestral Guidance, maybe you could combo this with some other cooldowns to make it a more effective cooldown, but I don't see it being useful by itself. And Deluge for more consistent AoE raid healing. Tier 5 we have Ancestral Protection Totem, Earthen Shield, and Ancestral Vigor. Ancestral Protection Totem is a 5-minute cooldown. I think it's a bit much to be 5 minutes, but it could be a major raid CD because it does give you the 10% increase to maximum health. The Earthen Shield, I see that more in a dungeon scenario where you can use this as kind of a tank cooldown because it provides, I want to say, something around the order of 20k damage absorb up to a maximum of like 1.5 million on a 1 minute cooldown. It's pretty crazy. I could see the drawback there of you have to stay within 10 yards of the totem. Ancestral Vigor is something you'd probably take if you're putting a lot of Riptides and things out on the raid, and that could actually be pretty useful for those big raid AoE damage moments when you get the entire raid's health up by 10%. For Tier 6 we have Bottomless Depths, Cloudburst Totem, and Echo of Elements. Bottomless Depths to me is a mana saving talent, and probably when you're in the lower gear ranks before you have a lot of crit, this is going to help. Cloudburst, it's a neat mini cooldown potentially for raid healing. And then Echo of Elements, I see that more of for blanketing Riptides more than anything, so when you're in a big raid situation. Tier 100, we have Ascendance, Wellspring, and High Tide. I took Ascendance because it's a nice little cooldown. It doubles your healing for 15 seconds. It's kind of hard to beat. Wellspring is cool. It's like Halo from Priests. It's got a pretty large mana cost, though, at around 77,000 mana. But if you have enough targets to make it worth it, probably in a raid situation, I'm not sure if it's good enough for a 5-man to take it. And then High Tide is another more consistent AoE damage. If you're in a fight where all the time you're taking damage, then I would take High Tide to get that additional target on Chain Heal. But you have to have the mana to support it. So, what else do we have? We have Chain Heal is still here. Healing Rain is still here. What you lost as a Resto Shaman is you lost a lot of the little shields. You lost Earth Shield, you lost Water Shield. But you're still a really good healer. What you lack is mobility, and by mobility I mean doing things on the move. You can move around pretty fast with Ghost Wolf, but you can't do much more than drop Riptides or a totem or two while you're running unless you have Spirit's Walker's Grace up. Yeah, it's okay though. If you are able to stand still, you can do a lot of healing. The Mastery, which is still deep healing, which provides a percentage increase based on the missing health of the target, which is going to be amazing for progression raids. So when your guild is trying to push content and they're not quite geared and they're dropping healers to put more DPS on a DPS check, they're probably not going to drop you if you're the Resto Shaman. They're probably going to bring you and probably a Druid, because Druids are just insane right now. But, things like a Monk, well, they might kick them out. So I can see not Druids, but Shamans having a very stable spot in raid. The healing CDs, you still have Healing Tide Totem, which ticks approximately 5 times, 22,000 per target. If you were in a 25-man raid, that's roughly 2.7 million healing over 10 seconds, or roughly 270,000 healing per second. Spirit Link is still here. However, you do not have any healing defaultly attached to it. It's just kind of going to come off of, being able to effectively use those ground heals to the maximum effect so that you're not over healing. Still a really cool CD, but, is it as good as a Tranquility? No. But it's okay. It provides something that no other class, as far as I'm aware of, can do, which is the redistribution of damage. So the artifact weapon for Restoration Shamans is called, Sasaradal, Scepter of the Tides. I'm just going to call it Scepter of Tides. It provides you the ability called Gift of the Queen, which heals allies for about 100k within 12 yards. It's a 1.9 second cast and roughly a 45 second cooldown. It's pretty neat. It's a nice little thing. You do have to be in range of folks, which is, hit or miss. Now, there's a couple different paths you can take when leveling that artifact weapon, and I would recommend that you first go for the Queen's Decree. That is, Healing Stream Totem heals each affected ally for an additional 27,000 over 6 seconds. The reason why I'd go for that first is because it provides you better mobility. So like I said, you can't do much while moving, but you do have the ability to now do a little bit more through this talent, and you're going to be dropping Healing Stream Totem all the time. The next one I would go for would be Tidal Pools, which is Riptide has a chance to summon a Tidal Totem at the target location, which heals enemies, or allies rather, for 40,000 over 60 seconds. Just really a passive Riptide buff. You're going to use Riptide all the time. So that's really nice. And then the last one, and the reason why I'm going for it last, would be Cumulative Upkeep. So cumulative upkeep, every time your Healing Tide heals an ally, that ally gains 10% increased healing received from your Healing Tide, stacking up to 7 times. That's really only going to benefit you in raids. So assuming you're not going to get, to raids immediately, you're probably going to be okay taking that as your last unlocked Golden Dragon. So that said, I think in terms of the healers and where Resto Shaman stands, it stands to me at probably a solid 2nd or 3rd place. The top 3 being Resto Druid being number 1 by a wide margin, and then either the Shaman or potentially the Holy Paladin. And then Holy Priest is at 4th, but quite a distance away from Disc Priest and Resto Monks. Mistweavers, my apologies. But Shaman feels good. It has the upside of having some good DPS specs as well. Well, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.